Welcome back to Scanner School. This episode, I'm going to answer 4 user-submitted questions. Let's get right to answering those right now. Welcome to Scanner School. My name is Phil Lichtenberger, and I've been in the scanner radio hobby since about the time that I could crawl, and I love answering your questions. So a couple of days ago, I reached out on our Facebook group to see if anybody had any questions they wanted answered. I picked 4 of those, and here we go. Right from the top, let's start with a question from Dylan. Dylan says, I'm located in Sullivan County, Tennessee, and I like to monitor the Tennessee Highway Patrol District 5 dispatch on the statewide P25 Phase 2 trunking system called the TACN, which is the Tennessee Advanced Communications Network. I do not believe it's a simulcast system, but sometimes, depending on where I'm at, I don't receive all of the transmissions or they come in garbled. Could you take a look at the database and confirm whether or not I'm experiencing simulcast issues or if it's something on my end? I'm using a BCD 536 HP. Well, Dylan, to start off, yes, it already sounds like you have a simulcast issue. The key points here are it depends on where you're located, which tells me that this is a specific issue to a specific location. Sometimes it works fine, and sometimes it doesn't. And what that tells me is, without doing any research, sometimes you are experiencing simulcast distortion and other times you are not. So let's take a quick second here to talk about simulcast. Is simulcast an issue with an entire trunk system? No. It's specifically an issue when it comes to P25 transmitter sites, not an entire P25 system. And this is specific to P25 sites because what happens is you have a digital signal coming into your scanner radio. And what happens is that zeros and ones will come in out of phase or out of sync from one another when you've got multiple transmitter sites or transmitter locations transmitting the same data at the same time, but you receive them slightly out of sync. In other words, a millisecond or a nanosecond can make all the difference in putting zeros and ones back together again. This is why radios like the SDS-100 and the SDS-200 are very popular when it comes to P25 decoding in simulcast areas. And because the P25 data can't be put back into sync or it can't be decoded because they're slightly out of frame, what happens is that the scanner radio will then discard that packet. It becomes an issue with digital signals. With analog, it wasn't an issue, right? With analog, it was just basically a signal that came in. If it was slightly out of phase, it really didn't matter, right? We couldn't hear it, and there was no decoding on the scanner. It just passed the analog signal. When it comes to digital, you've got to have enough. You have to have enough of that packet available so that the scanner can put zeros and ones back together again. So let's go ahead and take a look at this system over at Radio Reference and see if this is actually a simulcast issue or not. For those of you who are following on the podcast only, what we're going to look at right now is the Radio Reference database. So right now up on screen, I have the Tennessee Advanced Communications Network, or the TACN, up from Radio Reference. And what we notice right away is that this is a P25 Phase 2 system. And if we sort by county by clicking on the actual word county, we can then sort through each one of these sites and group them by county. Now, we do see a couple here, right? Northwest Georgia simulcast. And that tells us that that site is a simulcast site or a network of transmitter locations all transmitting the same thing at the same time. They're in simulcast. But a lot of these transmitter sites don't say simulcast. There's very few of them that say that. So we're going to scroll all the way down here to Sullivan County, which is where Dylan is located. And I'm just going to pick the Sullivan County site as an example. So the Sullivan County site does not say simulcast. So if we're just going to take a high-level view of this transmitter location or this transmitter site, it looks like it's not simulcast. However, when we click on the name Sullivan County, what happens is we can see that we have an FCC call sign, we have a P25 channel ID table, and we have the frequencies. However, as we scroll all the way down to the bottom of this site information, we can see that we have on the map 4 or 5 transmitter locations. So if we zoom in on the map, we can actually see that. This tells us, without a doubt, because we have 5 transmitter locations, that this is actually a simulcast site. And yes, Dylan, depending on where you are and driving through and listening to this site in Sullivan County, you are experiencing simulcast issues. Now, for the fun of it, let's back up and look at some of the other sites in Sullivan County. We have Bays Mountain. And again, if we scroll down to the bottom of Bays Mountain, we only see 1 transmitter site. This tells us that Bays Mountain is strictly a single transmitter site and is not a simulcast site. So maybe when you're driving around your scanner, if you have this site programmed in, you are scanning the Bays Mountain site and not the simulcast site of Sullivan County. And this is alleviating some of your simulcast pains. Let's look at some of the other ones here in Sullivan County. We've got Holston Mountain, which says simulcast Washington County. And again, we have 2 transmitter sites here, although they are pretty far apart. So maybe you're only picking up 1 site when you're driving around or monitoring this site from Sullivan County. And we've got Holston Mountain, which is state. And again, we've got 2 FCC call signs here. And if we look at the map, we've got 1 site down here. So if we look again, if we click on any one of these FCC call signs, that'll actually show us the transmitter location if there's latitude and longitude associated with that call sign. And apparently for these 2 call signs for this particular site, there's only geographical data for 1 tower in this site. So maybe this is a simulcast site and maybe this one isn't. So one thing we have to remember, again, when we program our scanner radios, how are we setting them up? Are we scanning all of the sites in the system or all the sites that are in our geographical area that we want to monitor? Because again, we've got a couple of sites here in Sullivan County, and some of them are simulcast and some of them aren't. So when we look at what we're scanning, we have to see if we have a problem when our scanner is saying that it's on the simulcast site, or one that we've determined now is a simulcast site, or the ones that may or may not be a simulcast site. So again, we've talked about how to resolve some simulcast issues. And again, the best way to do so is to eliminate the transmitter sites in that cluster of transmitters, right? So what we want to do is we want to pick up 1 site or the closest site, or maybe even null out some of the sites that might be coming in. Again, we have to retrain ourselves on our hobby. Instead of using an outdoor antenna or a mobile antenna, we stick to using a antenna that's on the radio itself. Maybe we use an attenuator to kind of bring down the signal or pad it down so that we're not trying to receive everything that's out there, right? By doing this, we can limit the exposure to these simulcast issues that we might be having. Now, again, while driving around, we are changing the way that the signal is coming into our scanner at all times. What might work at, a major interstate may not work a couple miles down the road. So again, this is going to be one of these issues that you have to decide, do you want to keep using your BCD 536 while you're mobile? Maybe you want to upgrade into something else. Or maybe it's okay that you're passing through these areas fast enough that the simulcast is something that you can deal with. Again, simulcast is something that we have to understand, and we have to figure out that, yes, this is just another challenge in the hobby. But again, we have overcome some bigger hurdles in the past. This is just something now that with things changing, this is now the new struggle with a lot of people when it comes to the scanner radio hobby. That was a great question. Thank you so much for being a part of our Facebook community and also for asking your question. All right, let's move on to our next question that comes in from Trafton. Trafton asks, when scanning DMR systems, is there a way to specifically scan a DMR network such as Brandmeister or TGIF using Uniden programming software? Thanks. Well, Trafton, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but what we're trying to listen to when it comes to Brandmeister and TGIF is really dependent on the repeater that we are listening to. Now, to back things up a little bit for people who don't know what Brandmeister or TGIF are or is, those are DMR networks that are for amateur radio use. So there's several different DMR networks on amateur radio, and Brandmeister and TGIF being two of the more popular back end or backhaul or hubs or networks, I guess you want to call them. Now, what happens is the repeater user, the repeater owner, or the repeater group that you are listening to with your scanner radio or your ham radio has already dictated what networks they want to be associated with. So whether or not they want to be part of Brandmeister, or they want to be part of TGIF, or maybe they don't want to be part of those, maybe they want to be a part of something different, their repeater is tied into those networks. Now, sometimes as a user, the repeater owner will say, or the repeater club will say, hey, if you want to monitor these talk groups, this is the key sequence in order to do so. Again, you are basically using somebody else's repeater or another club's repeater to get into the back end or the group, right, that you want to monitor. Now, I don't want to say group based on talk group. I'm talking about groups such as Brandmeister or TGIF. Now, to have more control over this, and what I do is I've set up my own hotspot at home. So there's several different flavors of hotspots, and we won't talk about it in detail on this podcast. We'll get into it more in a future episode. But what this device allows me to do is allows me to pick what talk groups I want to monitor. So I can actually listen to TGIF and Brandmeister from the same hotspot, and I can dictate what talk groups I am monitoring on it. So for example, if I want to listen to the Scanner Junkies net at Thursday evenings, I believe they are, I can actually set my hotspot to listen to that talk group, which is 1033, by the way. And I can monitor that from my scanner radio. I can monitor that from my ham radio, that's a DMR radio, and I can check in, or I can just monitor that, right? I'm in full control. It's my hotspot. Same goes for what network it's going to be on, Brandmeister or TGIF. Now, again, I know we're just basically touching the top of this when it comes to what Brandmeister is, what TGIF is, what a DMR hotspot is, right? But we'll go into some more detail, I promise you, on a future podcast episode. This is more of a amateur radio specific type of question, but I get it, right? There's a lot that we can listen to out there, especially if you're interested in using your scanner radio to monitor a DMR repeater. Now, again, I've been using my BCD160DN to monitor my own hotspot at home, and it works really well. In fact, I've been using it to compare some of my DMR radios, because I always thought my DMR radios sounded like they were missing some packets, or they didn't sound as good as I think they should have been. And I wasn't sure if it was an issue with my hotspot or my radio. So I don't know if it's still an issue with my hotspot or radio, but I can definitely hear my transmissions on my hotspot better on my scanner than I can on my Anytone device, which tells me I've got some homework to do. Trafton, great question. I promise you we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail on a dedicated episode. And again, thank you for asking your question in our Facebook group. Now, before we answer the last two questions on this podcast episode, I just want to take a minute here to thank my Patreon supporters. And depending on the tier level that you support this podcast at, there are different benefits that are available to you. One of those benefits could be getting this podcast episode earlier. It also could be monthly meetups that we are holding just for our Extra Credit Club. So if you want to help support the podcast and you want to become a Patreon member, you can go to scannerschool.com/Patreon. All right, our next question comes in from Ray. And Ray writes, in October 2023, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania awarded a contract to implement a P25 Phase 2 Simulcast system to replace their VHF communications for all emergency services. It's expected to go into service January 2026. What is the best way to find all the frequencies and talk groups? File a Freedom of Information request with the county, or wait from someone to identify them in the radio reference database? Ray, great question. Now, I'm going to start off by saying the secrets are in the searches. You guys know by now that is my favorite motto that we've coined here on Scanner School. Go out and hunt for the frequencies. That's my best advice for you. There's different ways that we can do this, right? Instead of just blindly going out there and looking for brand new frequencies and control channels and waiting for this, we can go onto the FCC website and look in the FCC database to see if there are any frequencies that have been recently licensed for Lehigh County. Now, typically, these are going to be licensed in the county, by the county, or a third party. So we can do as a geo search for Lehigh County, or we can just do a straight search for Lehigh County. And we may find that we find the frequencies that are newly licensed. Great. This gives us a good starting point. Let's put them in our scanner into a search bank or a scan bank. What happens? We may not hear anything for quite some time, but eventually we're going to get a control channel. That's the first step in finding out that there's something new on this system. The system is now live, right? We have a control channel. From there, let's start logging, right? Let's put our scanner radio into ID search mode. And let's start listening for new talk groups. Eventually, we're going to find some talk groups that are going to be used by radio techs. And these are going to be basically just radio techs going out there, driving the network. Can you hear me? How do you hear me? Right? I'm in this location. I'm in that location. They're just going to be getting the lay of the land. Eventually, what's going to happen is they're going to drive the system. And they're going to drive the system with pre-recorded transmissions, such as Mary Had a Little Lamb, or the big brown fox jumps over the big log, whatever it is, right? And this is a way of testing the audio quality on the network. Basically, there's somebody driving around with a transmitter that's reciting these phrases, and there's another receiver that's decoding how well it can receive these audio transmissions. And they're going to drive the entire network, basically, and see how well this works. Then they'll start slowly bringing on talk groups. Again, you may find the radio techs keying up on these talk groups. And then eventually you're going to find out that they're going to start simulcasting these. What's the best way to do this? Well, I like logging these because this happens basically at all hours of the day or all hours of the night. You don't really know when it's going to start. You don't know when it's going to happen. But if we use something like a home patrol, right, with the discovery system in there or discovery logging, we can do that. I've done that when they launched our new Q25 system here where I live. You can use ProScan or Butel to log the system if you have ID search in your scanner. But if you want to take it one step further, you can use a software-defined radio with something like SDR Trunk, DSD Plus, or even Unitrunker to monitor the talk groups on the system. Now, if it's going to be a phase 2 talk group, Unitrunker currently won't log the audio. It's just going to just say, hey, these are active. But there's going to be no way of following the conversation. But if you record it using DSD Plus or SDR Trunk, you'll be able to at least know what the activity was on that talk group. And when they start patching in groups from the old system or the VHF conventional side of the house, you'll know what those talk groups are for. That's a great way to start mapping out and understanding what's out there. Yes, you can wait for somebody to log the system for you and find the information on the radio reference database, but what fun is that? The secrets are in the searches. Go out there and go find the system and then submit them to radio reference. There's a lot of fun that can be uncovered and had by looking at the data on a brand new system as they roll it out, and allows you to kind of understand what's happening out there. Again, this is probably going to be a multi-site system, so you'll be able to even compare sites from one site to another site. What talk group is on site A and is not showing up on site B, or what site is carrying multiple talk groups and are sharing them? Is the East and the West site simulcasting the same talk group? There's a lot of fun out there. Again, you've got some time, but if they're going to launch this in 2026, I guarantee you they're going to start putting some of this stuff into play now. So get out there, get scanning, get searching, and let us know what you find. Thanks again, Ray, for asking such a great question. Our last question of the month comes in from Jenny, and Jenny asks, hey, Phil, how do you foresee AI technology use as it relates to the scanner radio hobby? Or do you? Jenny, really great question. And yes, I believe that AI is going to help with the scanner radio hobby in several ways. And I've already seen it helping with the scanner radio hobby. For example, AI has been used by some third-party applications or systems to dictate or to transcribe audio. Now, I use it when I record podcast episodes to transcribe what I'm saying onto screen so I can go back and edit it later and also add transcriptions into my videos. but there are agencies out there that are marketing, taking a scanner radio signal and transcribing the audio and using AI to send out notifications to their customers, such as there's a fire at this location, or there are police activity, or it's an EMS call here. And this can be used for news agencies, or it can be used for cleanup crews, or even just buff users who want to know what's going out there. I've also used AI just in fun and games to help me actually create podcast episodes, such as, hey, AI, can you help me, write this episode? I'm having a hard time putting my thoughts together. That's a high-level version of what I'm doing here. Let's go ahead to the computer and see what kind of results we get. So for this example, I am using Gemini from Google. So let's go ahead and just use the microphone and ask Gemini a question. Hey, Gemini, I want to listen to NYPD on a scanner radio. Can you tell me how to do that? So thinking about it, it says, it is important to understand that listening to police radio communications has become increasingly complex due to encryption. Here's a breakdown of how it generally works and some more important considerations. So it says you can listen with online streaming and apps, and also with traditional scanner radios. And it's also important that many law enforcement agencies, including parts of NYPD, are encrypting their radio communications. This means that the transmissions are scrambled and you won't be able to listen to them with a standard scanner. So it's very interesting that Gemini already knows that there's encryption in NYPD. So let's go ahead and ask Gemini another question. Hey, Gemini, I understand that NYPD is encrypted. Are there other frequencies or agencies in the New York City area that I can listen to with a scanner radio? Gemini says, it is true that NYPD's increased encryption has significantly impacted the ability to monitor their communications. However, there are still other agencies and services in the New York City area that might be available for listening with a scanner. And here's a breakdown. And to summarize, it says FDNY, EMS, other municipal agencies, the Port Authority. It even gives a link to the Port Authority and other local police departments. So there's a lot here, and even links to your reference, by the way. There's a lot here that we can look at when it comes to how to use AI to help with our scanner radio hobby. So here's one more question that we'll ask AI. Hey, Gemini, I'm very interested in the scanner radio hobby. Are there any podcasts or YouTube channels that might help me learn a little bit more about the scanner radio hobby? And of course, Gemini respond, it's excellent that you're diving into the scanner radio hobby. It's a fascinating area with a lot to learn. Here are some helpful resources, particular podcasts and YouTube channels that can be very helpful. Podcasts and YouTube channels, Scanner School. This is a very prominent resource. Scanner School provides a podcast and also has a YouTube presence dedicated to all things scanner radio. There's obviously a lot that we can do with AI, and I think we're just seeing the start of this, right? There's a lot with AI that's new and that's scary for a lot of people, but there's also a lot that it can help us out with. And I think when it comes to doing things with the scanner radio, such as, again, transcribing what it is that we're listening to, sending us bits and pieces of information that might be something that we want to be aware of. Maybe we want to have AI listen to a scanner radio and let us know if something is happening in our street, or maybe every time the fire department gets a dispatch that we have a text message sent to us of what the call actually is, right? These are probably things that we could start training AI how to do. And there's a lot more that can be done here. So again, great suggestion for a upcoming podcast episodes. So if you want to see something like that, make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel and also to our podcast. And don't forget, the podcast can be taken with you wherever you are. So if you want to take us out for a run or in the car or whatever, hey, you can listen to us there. And again, don't forget to check out our latest playlists over on YouTube. And you can be part of our growing community over on Discord. Just go to scannerschool.com/Discord to join your fellow scan nerds. That's it for this week's episode. Make sure, again, you've clicked subscribe, hit that thumbs up on YouTube, and we'll see you all again next week. 73.